With the Russian Grand Prix fast approaching and the Hamilton/Verstappen championship fight in full swing, Formula One fanatics have been keeping an eye out for the latest headlines in motorsport. But since so much has been happening, it's almost impossible to keep up. So join us as we explore the stories you should be paying attention to. Number 1. Hamilton's titanium halo saves him from a deathly fate. To start off, let's take a look at the controversy that arose in the Italian Grand Prix a few weeks ago. For those of you who don't know, Verstappen and Hamilton found themselves at loggerheads again after both drivers experienced a pit stop that was slower than usual. When it came to the championship leader, a human error in the Red Bull pit actually resulted in time wastage in the double digits, causing Hamilton to eventually overtake him on completing his own slower pit stop. But this was only by a hair, with Verstappen immediately launching an attack against the Mercedes in an attempt to take his place back. When the drivers went into the Rettifield chicane, which is renowned for causing some nasty accidents over the years, Lewis refused to give sufficient space to Max, resulting in him drifting off the track and colliding with one of the reduction bumps. And unfortunately for the defending champion, this collision in turn caused Max to collide with him, sending both drivers off the track and retiring them from earning any points at Monza. Whether the accident was Verstappen or Hamilton's fault began a conversation at dinner parties across the globe, with some stating that Max attacked far too aggressively, while others mentioned the fact that Hamilton should have given him more space for safety reasons. Something else that Verstappen fans could rely on was the incident that took place earlier this year at Silverstone, which was arguably worse and resulted in Max flying off the track and colliding with the barrier. And while Hamilton received a small penalty for causing the incident, he still went on to win the race, while Max was receiving hospital care, earning a grand total of 27 points and a pat on the back for preventing a point gain by Verstappen. But we aren't here to argue with one party or another, as that's an argument for another day. And honestly, it all comes down to the notion of giving space, which both drivers have been guilty of at one point or another. The real story here is the safety that Hamilton's titanium halo brought him during the accident, which essentially prevented Max's tire from hitting him hard against the helmet. In fact, if Mercedes is to be believed, the halo actually saved Hamilton's life. The reason why this is such a big story at the moment is the history that Formula One fans have had with the halo, which was introduced for the first time in the beginning of the 2018 season. Since it was a bit of an eyesore, the reception of the halo was lukewarm at best. Even drivers had an issue with the halo, stating that it impaired the visibility that they had of the track, which was arguably more dangerous than the protection it would offer them in a crash. But now that the protective force of the halo has been felt, the majority of its naysayers have somewhat changed their tunes. You see, although this accident appeared to happen in slow motion, the full weight of Verstappen's car would have surely crushed Hamilton. But since the halo took the majority of the force away from the falling vehicle, Lewis was left with just a small headache after receiving a small bump from Verstappen's wheel. And yes, it's true that Hamilton had to see a specialist after the race to ensure that everything was on track, but that has to do with safety regulations in place, not the severity of the injury. For those of you who are wondering, Lewis did indeed receive the all clear from his medical team and will be driving unimpeded in the upcoming Russian Grand Prix. In his first public statement about the incident on Twitter, after the anger he felt on the track had died down, Lewis had the following to say about the titanium halo he had previously complained about. "I feel very, very fortunate today. Thank God for the halo. That ultimately saved me and saved my neck. I don't think I have ever been hit on the head by a car before, and it is quite a shock for me. If you see the image, my head is quite far forward. I've been racing for a long, long time, and I am so grateful I am still here and feel incredibly blessed that someone was watching over me today." Funny enough, this isn't the first time that the halo has prevented a possible death in Formula One. Romain Grosjean, who back in 2017 referred to the idea of the halo as a sad day for Formula One, was actually saved by it in 2020 when he had his horrific crash in Bahrain. You might not know this, considering how Grosjean's escape from his burning car that had been split in two by the crash was all that mattered. But when an investigation was carried out, it was found that the titanium halo had actually taken the brunt of the impact with the barrier. Suffice to say, if it wasn't for for his own halo. Romain Grosjean would not still be around right now. Another driver, Charles Leclerc, was actually protected by the halo as well as far back as 2018, when the McLaren of Fernando Alonso was launched into the air and fell on top of his Sabre. So as it turns out, the introduction of the halo was one of the best decisions ever made by the organizers of the Formula One Championship. Sure, it made the cars look a bit strange, but in the end, driver safety should be put above everything else. Number 2. Red Bull are considering a double penalty when it comes to Sochi. With the Formula One Championship race being closer than ever, it looks like Red Bull are going to have to deal with some setbacks before they are able to enjoy the 5-point lead that Verstappen had gained over Hamilton. In fact, it's looking more and more likely that Lewis will be able to clinch the lead from Max at the upcoming Russian Grand Prix. Not only is Sochi far more suited to their rivals, Mercedes, Verstappen will also be serving a 3-place grid penalty as a result of what was deemed by the stewards to be reckless driving at the Italian Grand Prix, which saw both vehicles careening off the track. But according to stewards, the majority of the fault lay in how Verstappen attacked Hamilton in the corner, who Max argued refused to give him any space to move. Whether the stewards were correct in making this decision or not, we have no idea. It's a question that cannot be answered from an unbiased position, with each camp agreeing with their own driver and ignoring all other comments. Either way, Verstappen has been handed a penalty, and that's that. But Red Bull appear to have a strategy in the works that may very well ignore the effects of the Monza penalty. You see, when Hamilton collided with Verstappen back in Silverstone, the Red Bull's engine was damaged beyond repair, and since teams are only allowed to make use of a total of 3 engines throughout the championship, this has put Verstappen in a very difficult position. He knew that he was going to have to rely on a 4th engine somewhere down the line, but since this would be contrary to the racing regulations, it would cause him to suffer a pretty hefty penalty. In fact, relying on a 4th engine will result in a 10-place grid penalty, so why not take both penalties in the upcoming Russian Grand Prix? Well, that's precisely what Red Bull began asking themselves. According to the team advisor, Marco Helmut, that has not yet been decided, but I do think that you can overtake rather well in Sochi. Sochi has been a Mercedes track in the past, but we have been competitive everywhere this year. So if everything works together perfectly, then we can also challenge Mercedes there. And that's where Red Bull sit at the moment. In all honesty, the decision is not an easy one to make. On the one hand, by taking a 3-place penalty, they'll be able to keep the pressure on Hamilton and force him into making a mistake. A 13-place penalty, on the other hand, may allow Hamilton to get some more breathing room by securing a full 27 points over Verstappen as he did in Silverstone a few months ago. And when Hamilton has more breathing room, there's no doubt that he'll be less prone to making mistakes. Former world champion Jacques Villeneuve summed up the situation perfectly by saying the following about the decision that Red Bull has to make in the next couple of days. Verstappen has been better this season. He's made no real mistakes and has always been on the attack. Lewis, on the other hand, has shown weaknesses, and Mercedes too, more so than Red Bull. After Rosberg left, they had an easy life. Maybe Lewis fell asleep a bit, but he has suddenly woken up this year and remains a phenomenon. Whether Red Bull decides to double up on penalties this coming weekend is something that remains to be seen, but it's definitely something that is on the cards right now. What do you think about the incident, though? How should Red Bull deal with things when the Russian Grand Prix comes along?